I wrote a post about my birthday on my birthday. What I wrote was, today is my birthday. I chose to be born into this world on this day 42 years ago. I chose my parents beautifully. I chose my siblings wisely. My family welcomed me with anticipation and joy, and I get what a privilege that is. I was born for this time with all of its innovation, chaos, wonder, pain, and possibilities. I'm here to open doors, to heal, to create, and be me with all of my strengths, gifts, and powers. I'm here to connect, grow, and thrive as I seek playmates who are searching and choosing this for themselves in their own way. I ask myself multiple times a year, and especially on my birthday, what would I like my legacy to be? What if we didn't wait until the end of our lives to explore that?
Welcome to Journeys Through Change, a podcast that inspires women to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing's off the table. I'll be offering up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and sharing interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they learned along the way. So get cozy in your favorite comfy chair and let's get started. When you think about your life, do you ever wonder how many twists and turns got you to where you are today? Thinking about the richness of our lives is not often easy, but if you were to recognize some of the experiences you've had along the way for what they really were, stepping stones to get you to where you are today, would even the painful ones feel worth it? The truth is, there are no mistakes in life, and as complex as they may seem in the moment, our experiences are no exception. Siris Raquel Rivas-Verdejo is no stranger to life's complexities. As a sister of two disabled siblings, her fierce independence made her a source of strength for them at an early age, taking on many roles to keep the family in balance and spirits high through times of unbelievable challenge. Her family moved from Puerto Rico to Chicago when she was 3 years old, and as she grew older, she began to develop unexplained health issues. Experiencing chronic pain, anxiety, depression, undiagnosed allergies, and a failed immune system, her body had become unmanageable, and she searched for answers and hope. She knew in order to save her own life, she had to start asking her body questions and surrendering to receiving the help of others. Along the way, she began to explore energy work, and as she followed the guidance of a naturopath and became more internally attuned, her body slowly started to heal, and she began questioning other areas of her life as well, opening her up to a whole new world. Siris' work is informed by her life's journey, and as a family and child coach, speech-language pathologist, and therapeutic energy worker, she empowers others to communicate better in all areas of their life through conscious body connection and inner awareness to build trust and confidence. She has developed a poignant, dynamic, and unique approach that honors the little girl she was, who always knew more was possible for those who are different, magical, and a gift to the world, empowering them to create the remarkable lives they so deserve. Siris, welcome to the podcast. We're so excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me here.
So, Siris, I know we could start in so many different places because there's a lot to cover. And I usually kind of leave it to the guests to get started where you think is a good starting point.
The first image that pops into my head was when my brother was born. My sister was 2 years after me. She was born 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days after I was born. So like all the twos. So it was really
Whoa.
interesting. As much as it was like a lot going on and it was a lot of shock for the family because she came out with her head on her shins, feet first, her legs like pointed toward each other because of her spina bifida. I wasn't around for a lot of those initial appointments. I don't really, if I was, I don't recall. I think my grandmother was taking care of me. But with my brother, when he was born, I was 6. So I was remembering things a lot more. We had just moved from Puerto Rico to Chicago, and I can picture in my head how the curtains were closed behind him, and it was like a silhouette. And you could see this little baby body, and he had these tubes coming off of him. Like if like as if he was like an octopus, right? Or like a those really old school like when they dove underground or under the water and like the cartoons, like even I'm thinking of a Mickey Mouse cartoon where they go underwater and they have that the big metal helmets and the tubes around. It was like that. And I'm seeing this and I'm hearing very small breathing and the silhouette of all these tubes that were circulating the blood for him because he didn't have enough space in his chest for his lungs to grow and for his heart to be able to pump the blood for him. So they were using this machine called the ECMO machine that was breathing and circulating the blood for him. And so I could see all these different colors of purples and blues if I got closer. But when you first walked into the room to see him, it was the silhouette because we were trying to also kind of give him time to rest, right? And like mimic the space of the womb. So I remember seeing that, but I also on the right side would see people just crying, like trying to cry quietly, but they were crying. And I was so confused as to why all these adults in my life were crying. Everybody was trying to visit him from Puerto Rico, from California, from New York. We had family all over to see the baby before he died. That was the target. And I remember being like, why are they worried about that? He's not going to die. He has to be here. He's my brother. I've been waiting for my brother. I have my sister. I got one of each. Good to go.
Right.
But that was when it really started hitting me how I was aware of what was possible beyond all the chaos around, beyond a lot of people's emotionality, and where I just got to just flow energy to him and be like, hey, I'm waiting for you and I'm here.
Mhm.
And we're very, very close to this day. Like he's just a couple of rooms down from where I'm at right now. He works in cybersecurity and he's outcreated all these things that were expected of him
I
from
love
this
it.
little baby. He had 3 major surgeries the first 3 years of his life. A lot of people are saying, why bother fill out the birth certificate if we're going to fill out the death certificate right away? But you couldn't transfer him from one hospital to the other without a name and without a birth certificate. So they filled it out. And he has this beautiful name, Shaniel Omar Rivas-Verdejo. But that's really where I'm thinking of that right now. Like, wow, how powerful is that for a young child to see their sibling in that state and for everybody to be responding to it in that way? And yet, I was sad for the adults being sad, and I was a little worried because they were worried, but I was just like, there's nothing to worry about. Like, he's here. I'm waiting for him. Like, he knows it. Like, what's going on? Like,
The wisdom of a child, right? The wisdom of a child.
mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you guys are obviously very close. So how was that growing up? I mean, that was probably a lot holding space for all of that.
I don't think I was really holding space yet. If anything, I was trying to entertain myself and not be a burden. That was the biggest thing. I was so aware of the stress that my parents were going through. I was so aware of their running around. They were both bilingual educators in the public schools. And my dad was also a coach of different sports, tennis, basketball, volleyball. And then he had these 2 children that had all these different therapies and surgeries and follow-ups. And so I was just trying to not be in the way and not in a way that like I didn't think I was getting attention. I just knew they had other things to do. And so I became very independent early on. I would do homework and be reading. Reading was my constant companion. It still is. All the books behind me right now.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it started back then. I had my own little backpack of the things that I could do, like the colored pencils and the notebook and the books and my journals and whatever. And throughout my whole life, it was my responsibility to entertain myself. And if I was bored, it was my fault because that means I didn't prepare properly for what the time I was going to have to spend or whatever. Did you bring your homework? Did you do all that stuff? So I started then documenting what was going on. My mom, I think around maybe like 8 or 9, we started doing road trips and things like that.
Yeah.
What you could afford as a vacation on teachers' salaries when you also have a lot of medical bills, right? A lot of road trips in our childhood. And my mom just saying, just write what we did today. Just write what you ate. So I started journaling and writing.
Oh, I love that.
And I started doing that when I was like 10. And then my dad encouraged me to do poetry because he's a poet. And so I started just expressing myself in all these different ways, just other ways of getting the stuff that I was picking up on and that I was feeling out on paper and out in the world. And it keeps evolving over time.
Your family life sounds to me to be so multidimensional too, of like you have parents that are highly educated, doing a lot of different things, running around trying to, you've got the family dynamic, and then you've got you and your independence, which I'm so intrigued by because you know what? When I first met you, and I don't know, I feel like I get energy from people pretty quickly. You seem very, very grounded to me.
Mm.
You know, when somebody feels really grounded to you and you feel like they've been that way all their lives, there's certain people that you know it's taken them a while to get to that place, right? With you, I feel like just from what you've described about your background and how you grew up, it's almost like you had to have that inner strength, whether it showed up in its full bloom when you were that
Yeah.
young, maybe not, but it feels to me like that's kind of how you're built is you have this sense of strength that kind of gets you through from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, because you've had that since you were little, right? You've had challenges, obstacles, things that you needed to kind of look square in the face and say, okay, what are we going to do? I'm going to go get my crayons or my markers and I'm going to go journal and I'm going to do my own thing. And you guys do what you need to do.
If you wouldn't mind indulging me for a moment, I can pull up, and I told you before we started that earlier this week was my birthday. And on that similar vein of what you were just saying about strength, I wrote a post about my birthday on my birthday. And it really speaks to what you're saying, actually.
Let's hear it.
What I wrote was, today is my birthday. I chose to be born into this world on this day 42 years ago. I chose my parents beautifully. I chose my siblings wisely. My family welcomed me with anticipation and joy, and I get what a privilege that is. I was born for this time with all of its innovation, chaos, wonder, pain, and possibilities. I'm here to open doors, to heal, to create, and be me with all of my strengths, gifts, and powers. I'm here to connect, grow, and thrive as I seek playmates who are searching and choosing this for themselves in their own way. I ask myself multiple times a year, and especially on my birthday, what would I like my legacy to be? What if we didn't wait until the end of our lives to explore that? And then I write some more asking people to maybe share in what way I might have contributed to them. And since I have a lot of people that I connect with that aren't particularly verbal, but they speak energetically very well, I was like, put a dot, dot, dot. I'll tap into the energy, put an emoji, whatever way is your language, I will tap into it. No worries. But I think that that's one of the things that I love doing is there were so many moments where I didn't recognize my strength, where I didn't recognize how much of a pillar of groundedness, of resilience I was to other people. I was focusing on the wrong thing. I was judging myself. And I think a lot of people do that. And my hope is that if they meet me, they get to recognize a little bit more of what's true for them, what's the light of them, their strength, and what are their powers because we all have different gifts and powers. And I think that that is one of the ones that I've had. And then you're right. I feel like my life experiences tested it, made it stronger, added more layers, stack upon stack until that mountain that I already was became like all the more immense.
Oh my God. Okay, so let's talk about that. I know that you had health issues, and I don't know when that presented itself. Was that in your teens? When did that start happening?
I went to a residential high school. We don't like the term boarding school at my school. We called it residential high school. It was a public state funded high school called the Illinois Math and Science Academy in Aurora, Illinois. Hi to my IMSA alum, if anyone ever listens to this. I love my IMSA people. And we stayed there from sophomore to senior year of high school. So 3 years instead of the all four. And you have to apply to get in, you have to do testing and all these different stuff. Very much like applying to college, but in high school.
Yeah.
As much as I was very excited to go there and I was very much looking forward to it, I think that there was a bit of a shock to my system in a lot of ways because at that time I was very much still dealing with a lot of perfectionism. I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. The way that I started with trying to not be a burden and try to kind of entertain myself morphed pretty quickly in my like pre-adolescence into my adolescence as I need to be a good daughter. I need to be perfect daughter, perfect granddaughter, the best friend for everybody. And so it was just a lot of weight. And under that and a couple other circumstances, I think my body started to crack under the pressure and a lot of autoimmune issues started to crop up. including allergies and asthma. I started breaking out in hives, like hives where it would be just my skin would be bubbling and I'd have to ice it down. Like I wanted to rip my skin off. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. It's like, ugh. Just
Yes.
thinking about it now, it was so
Yeah.
bad. And it would come out of nowhere. And part of it was, I know now, undiagnosed allergies, but I think part of it was a way my body was trying to communicate with me. And I didn't know that that's what was happening. I didn't know how to listen to it. That's not something that we were taught. And I was picking up on not just my own stressors and pressures and acknowledging that. I was picking up on all these other teenagers that were away from home, away from their parents, and were very overachieving, gifted students as well that had a lot of interests and were just trying to do the best that they can. And I was probably an antenna picking up on all of that. And it played out in really creating a lot of havoc with my health.
Yeah. Was this a 2-year situation? Was this like, how long did it take?
I wish it was just 2 years.
Sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Was it much, much more?
Oh, it was like 10, 15 years.
Whoa. Okay.
I mean, even after I finally got diagnosed with all the allergies, it had taken such a toll on my immune system that I would be taking allergy medication, pain medication more often than not because I was also had multiple car accidents that created a lot of chronic pain. I wasn't driving the first car accident that created most of it, but the second car accident when I was 16 exacerbated the first one's injuries and that whole thing. So there
Yeah.
was allergy medication, nose spray, inhaler for asthma, and I was doing that year round and I would still get ridiculously sick, like barely able to function between November and March every year for about 10, 15 years.
Oh my God.
That was just like the band-aid. I wasn't really addressing the core causes of what was going on. I was avoiding the stuff I was allergic to. I changed my diet. I did so many different things. And it got to the point that in my 20s, so this started when I was 15, 16, and then I'll fast forward into your 20s. I'm in college and going into grad school. And the doctors were like, you're about to get pneumonia and you're going to die. Because I was going from being sick with colds to sinus infections to bronchitis to pneumonia. It was about to be pneumonia. And they were like, we need to do something. And I was like, great. So what you got? I'm willing to do it. I did everything that they, I was a very good patient and it didn't work. I loved my doctors. They were great doctors, very attentive. It was the ones where they would actually take their time. They didn't
Hmm.
rush me out. They were really asking questions, but it just didn't work. And if it did, I would be okay. That's great. But I had to go and do some naturopathic doctors. My mom was able to find a naturopathic doctor in Winfield, Illinois that was just amazing. And she created a personalized treatment plan. And every 2 to 3 months, I would have to change the tinctures and the supplements and the different things I was doing. At one point, at its peak, I was taking about 18 different things, but it worked. I could feel it working. Even after the first 3 to 6 months, I was like, oh my God,
Relief.
yes. I was like, okay, this is what I knew was possible. And the whole thing took about 2 to 3 years,
Hmm.
checking in every 2 to 3 months. I spent tons of money. I'm very grateful that I had the money to spend. That is a privilege I recognize. It's not something that everyone could afford. And I wish these things were included in insurance plans. I wish these
Yeah.
preventative cares were part of it because, well, I'm not going to get into that soapbox, but there's just a lot of people that really could benefit from it. And I come out on the other side of it actually being able to get off of all the medication. I haven't taken any medication since then, like on that regular basis. Every once in a while, something happens, I'll take it. I'm not against Western medicine, but when it came to saving my life, I needed to do something very different.
As we all know, change is inevitable. Sometimes it comes out of nowhere, leaving us to pick up the pieces and navigate our way through the unknown. Other times it's a decision we've made to step into a bigger version of ourselves or find more joy or fulfillment in our lives. Day by Day book was designed to help you face the discomfort of those shifts in life that are pushing you to that next level of growth and learning. It's a guided journal with a simple tracking system to manage your daily well-being during challenging times, setting you up for success no matter what life throws your way. Join our community of over 15,000 changemakers and get started on your daybook journey today. The time is now to step into change to create a life you love. To get your Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com. So this happens, you're off the supplements at this point. Is that when you started to look into energy work, or were you doing that kind of as part of, as you were getting better and healing?
At the same time, I don't think it would have lasted only 2 to 3 years if I didn't also look at the energetics
Yeah.
as well. So the naturopathic doctor that I was seeing was also a Reiki master, and a Reiki master times 10. Like, I didn't know about Reiki before her, and I certainly didn't know that there were so many different kinds. There's Usui Reiki, there's Lemurian Reiki, DNA Reiki, Angel Reiki. There's just so many. And so she practiced all of them and then taught classes on all of them. And I became a Reiki master as well. But one of the things that Reiki did, in addition to some other things that we did, we were always checking in energetically with aura pictures, while also that affected my treatment plan. So it would be like, this is what you're doing with iridology, which is when they use the eye to map out what's going on in your whole physiological system. IRID, OLOGY, if anyone wants to look it up. She does that for the physical. She did the aura pictures for the energetic. And then I was giving Reiki to myself. As soon as I knew the tools, I was using that sucker on myself all the
I was going to
time.
say, I'd never heard of that before. Doing it on yourself.
Every tool I've ever learned and used, it was for me first. It was for
Wow.
fun. It was to
Yeah.
help me. You're using an energetic tool. You're not using it for you. I mean, it's like, what are you doing? It's like you're sitting on a gold mine.
But how do you, okay, let me think, because I've had Reiki done, and it's a lot of like that transference of energy, right? Where there's hands laid on. So do you do that to yourself? Like you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
Absolutely. And that's what cleared my chronic pain. As soon as I got
Wow.
Reiki, I didn't have any pain anymore. Immediately. Like, it was so crazy because I was almost concerned. I was like, what am I going to be? Who am I going to be without this pain? I was so used to it that when I didn't have it there as a companion, I was like, what is happening right now? Like, I don't know what to do with myself right now. Like, I didn't have something to complain about.
I was going to say, you use such an interesting word, companion. Like that's without that
Hmm.
as my companion, because it's true. It becomes your dialogue, right? It's kind of what you see the world through is this lens of like, not feeling good, not feeling, and then all of a sudden that just goes away. Now, how old are you when this all starts to dissipate? Are you in your late 20s, early
I'm
30s?
in my 20s. Let's see, this is 2006, 2007. Yeah, 20s.
Was it an immediate, like, okay, I've got all this energy. I know all of these things now in terms of how I can help with my body and how did that manifest? Because I know you work in linguistics, and I want to talk to you about that too, because it's a lot around
Hmm.
communication. But did you start incorporating that into what you do with your clients after you started, once you've experienced it yourself
Yeah.
and understood how that goes hand in hand? Like, how did that all transpire into what you do now?
The pain went away pretty quickly as soon as I got Reiki and started learning Reiki. So that was already like so much more energy just because I wasn't having to be distracted and like move through this thing, this barrier that to access to people to just have the energy to the kid. I'm working with kids. I'm working with little kids at this point on top
Right.
of that. I went out of grad school and immediately went into the Chicago public schools as a speech language pathologist. And a third of my caseload was profound to severe children with autism. They had profound to severe autism. They weren't mild, and they were preschoolers on top of that. So they're crawling, they're punching, they're screaming, you're chasing after them. We had all of the runners, right? That was a third of my caseload. And then the rest of my kiddos were other preschoolers through third grade. So the oldest kid I had was like 8 or 9 years old, and they had all the energy. And to be doing that, you got to think ahead of them. You have to always be anticipating the next thing that they're going to do before they do it. They will try to get away with everything.
I'm
I
sure.
love them. I love them. And they're petri dishes. So that's the other thing, too. And the first year of me being in the Chicago public schools was where it really got into a head where I was like, I have to do something because this is going to be even worse. They're sneezing on me and it's just dripping down my face. I'm wiping
Oh.
their nose, it's a whole thing. So I was immediately using it so that I would have more energy, so that I kept my immune system up. When I would give the kids the hugs and they would be like, hey, Miss Rivas, could you come and see me? I'd give them hugs and I would give them some Reiki. Because as soon as you have it, you don't turn it off. You don't even have to necessarily be like, I'm doing Reiki right now. It's part of you. So I recognize that. And I recognize that because of it, I was able to have faster progress with a lot of my kids than with other people. People commented all the time, oh my gosh, how are they so well behaved with you? There's so many things in addition to the energy work that's just how I was with them
Mm-hmm.
that was different because I was showing up differently in my own life. And so I think it rippled out to affecting things professionally. Now, was I doing it as dynamically, as consciously as I could have? No, because I was still in my own journey with my health. And then by the time I finally didn't have all the medications and the pain and I didn't have to take anything anymore, I started working and transitioning all right around that same time into leaving the Chicago public schools and adding on like working in clinics, doing early intervention, which was birth to three kiddos in their homes and in daycares.
Now, can I circle back for just a second because I want to make sure, and I know I think I might have flubbed that when I was saying linguistics. Linguistics is not language pathology, right?
It's a part of it.
Is it part of it? Okay. What exactly is language pathology? Because you're about communication, and obviously children on the spectrum have that in my family as well. There's a lot around communication there and sensory and all that kind of stuff. But like, how does that interplay with language? Anyways,
Yeah.
I'm just more curious than anything else.
People often will tell, oh, she's the speech therapist. No, I'm not the speech therapist. I'm the speech language pathologist because speech is really about how you pronounce things, like the clarity of your speech, your voice. Language is about how you combine the words together to
Ah,
express yourself. And
yeah,
also there's a meta linguistics, so how you think about your language, metacognitive, how you process it, and also like the body distance, the silences. There's social language or pragmatic language, which is the language you use in social interactions. Verbal turn taking, we're having a conversation right now. Eye gaze, if you're actually turning to face your communication partner or turning away when you're talking. These are all the meta-linguistic stuff that's also part of speech language pathology. Language is about what you understand, how you process language and information, but also how you express yourself, expressive language. Then there's fluency, which is if someone speaks smoothly. If they don't, they might be stuttering or they might be just disfluent a little bit. All of us have some disfluencies when we say or we revise what we're saying in the middle of it. That's a disfluency. But if it's more extreme and more frequent, then you have stuttering disorder or a fluency disorder. There's a lot of aspects of speech language pathology, and it's pathologist because you're figuring out and analyzing where are the person's strengths, where are their challenges, and then you use the strengths to support what's trickier or what's challenging for them.
got it. And so if people come to you typically, there could be different issues. It could run the gamut, right? I mean, obviously, but is it typically around communication? Because you're saying that the ages that you work with are young, right? So they're developing their
No,
language.
it's
Is
the
that,
whole age range.
yeah,
So I started the young, and then I also started working with teenagers. I worked with teenagers, and like a lot of my caseload right now is elementary school and teenage kiddos. But then you also have to work with the parents, and then there's a lot of adults that work with me because they didn't have the models, they didn't learn these things as kids, and so they're finding where those are creating pitfalls for them as adults.
got
So
it.
it
So
really
it's
is from
manifesting
birth
later.
to death. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It sounds fascinating. I mean, what you do, and in terms of working with families, because you were explaining earlier when we talked earlier about working with the family dynamics too, right? I mean, you were saying at one point you were working with three different families at the same time, and all of that, like that. There's so much complexity to that, but also I could see where there's a lot of reward when you're able to make breakthroughs and really affect the outcome for like 5, 6, 7 people in a family versus just the kid.
That's the whole rippling out. Like one of the things I really like about it the most is that with each person, you're not just affecting them and their life, which is already super gratifying, but it's everybody that they interact with later. Like how they feel about themselves, how they will communicate with these people later on. You are planted a seed, you're a part of that. They take it with you. And then, so when it's a family, like that example you mentioned, it was three households, but one family. Grandparents, the mom with her new husband, the dad with his new wife, some new kids, and then there's other child that was bouncing around between these three households. And how do you co-parent then? And then when they right after we started working together, right after we worked together, then the dad has another child again, like so it's like it shakes things up and they have these tools now that they can use that they maybe didn't have as much or they weren't using as consciously as they could have. So I really love that because then it was affecting dad's work life. It was affecting how the stepmom was thinking about herself with her business prospects. She just started a new business. We stay in touch. They tag me on the things, I was like, yeah, we get to
I
celebrate.
love it.
This reverberation that I love about it.
So knowing kind of what you do now and when you were kind of as you were growing up and as you were going through the challenges that you've gone through, right, which have been physical challenges, emotional challenges, obviously. When you think back on when you were in your early 20s and where you are now, like what would you say to yourself if you were able to talk to your 20-year-old self right now? What advice would you give?
The first thing that popped, which is why I'm crying right now a little bit, is I'm glad you didn't kill yourself. That's the first thing, because I remember when I was 21, I was about to start senior year of college, and it was from August through December that year. It was like 2003, about to be 2004. It was one of the hardest times in my life. So it was, almost exactly 20 years ago. I was raped. I was hit by a car. I was diagnosed with cervical dysplasia. It was like one thing after the next. Oh, my dad stopped paying for college, and so I got three jobs to finish college. It was just one thing after the other, and at one point it was so much. I'm probably skipping over stuff because it was just like it felt like one thing after the other. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave my apartment. I was had a great roommate, and I didn't want to leave my apartment. I was so scared of what was the next thing that was going to happen. And so I didn't have like the kind of suicide ideation that was like active. It was just
Mm-hmm.
I was so tired. And so
Yeah.
if I didn't have roommates, I probably would have played out what I had thought at the time, which was to turn on the gas and the stove and just go to sleep and not wake up. I just wanted it to be done. I was so over the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. I was still dealing with a lot of chronic health issues because this was before the after grad school rebuilding my immune system stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
it was so much. And I didn't recognize the rape as rape until months later. And so there was a lot of like stuff that was coming at me in all directions that I wasn't really dealing with. And what I was dealing with was already overwhelming.
Right,
And
right.
so I'm just so glad that I didn't kill myself. I'm glad that that girl, that young woman, didn't kill herself because I wouldn't have been able to have impacted so many people that I have since then and have the life that I have now, which I really love.
Going back to that time, if you could think of the strength that came to you, was it just an internal, like, I'm not going to go there? I'm going to power through this and I'm going to, because you said it would, if you didn't have the roommates, you didn't have people that were there to kind of help support. Was there anything in particular that shifted that you can remember that was like, okay, I'm going from this feeling of wanting to go in one direction and now I want to just move forward? Or was it maybe a series of events, right? Because I know that you said it was before all of the health issues started to resolve a little bit, which I can imagine can also help, right? With your emotional and
Yeah, it was a
physical
lot.
well-being.
It was a series of moments of continuing to choose to live. I told my roommates. My mom called me. She would, if I didn't answer the phone in college, because she's always worried about me being on my own, living on my own and stuff. Even though I had roommates, she would call my roommate. She had all of my friends' numbers. She would hunt me down, even if I was just like at a meeting or in class, living my life. I was on a date, things like that. She would be like, "Where are you? What's going on?" I was like, "Ma." Finally, one of these calls, I was really in a dark place, and I told her, I was like, "I'm really struggling. This is what's going on. These are some of the thoughts that I have. It's I'm not doing anything about it yet, but I'm worried that I'm even thinking about it, right? I worked in a
Right.
crisis line. I helped talk people off of the ledge at 16. I was working in a crisis line when I was at the residential high school. I know the signs, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The small thing of even just speaking it out loud, I think is really powerful. That's when you don't feel like you can do anything else, even just saying it to somebody and sharing it. And I
Right.
shared it with one person, then I shared it with a couple people, and it just kept going. And what they said in those moments helped me have a little bit more hope. And that's not a small thing to have a little bit more hope. Every little bit counts. By December or so, I was just like, F it to this person, F it to this person. I got into my potency and was just like, no, I'm not going to let my rapist boyfriend win. I was in finals when we broke up, right before we broke up, and right before right when I realized, oh, that was rape what happened. Oh, okay. I shouldn't give him an out and a pass. Got it. There was so many things that I was like, oh, F my dad for bailing on me in my senior year and risking my future this way. Okay, got it. Like I was just like got so into my power, but it took all those months and these little micro moments of me reaching out to my circle and being like, this is what's going on. I started going to therapy. I think it was, I have to check, but I think it was January the following year. I was like, I need to find a therapist. So I started doing that, found a great therapist after a couple of trials. Please don't give up. It's annoying. It was so annoying because I was tired of telling my whole medical history for that person, my whole family history. I was like blah blah blah. But I finally found somebody that was a really good fit. She was a social worker, and between her and using all these tools, I got on medication. This is before I had energy work. I did it, and I always had the plan of doing it as a transitional step to not having it. But I was like, this is what's required right now. This is what's going to work right now. And within the year, I think it was about a year of therapy and medication, I was able to not need the therapy and I was able to not need the medication. And so I was like 21, 22 when that was happening. And then I was able to graduate college and I made a big speech about like, I made it.
As you're describing all of these things to me, which by the way, and I, I respect obviously the years of feeling that way or the amount of time that you felt the way you did. That's a very dark place to be in. But the fact that you popped out the other end of all of this at age 21 and gave a speech about it, like to me, it's like, this is where that inner strength to me, like, it's so fun to hear you talk because it's like you have this energy about you that's kind of like, you're going to figure it out. Even in the darkest moments, which I know are not times when you think it's going to be figure outable, but even in those darkest moments, you're able to come back like 10 times stronger. And you're 21. That's really young. That's really, really young.
Well, I'd already experienced a lot before then. And then I have even more data points since then. So I think when that really builds your confidence, if you like over and over again, people have told you
Yes.
you couldn't or there was no hope, and then you're like, I'm actually going to do it anyway, and you do figure it out, like it kind of makes you feel like, yeah, sure, try and stop me.
Exactly, exactly. Okay, so on that note, where you are right now in your career, in your life, what's next? What are some of the things you're wanting to do?
I was really fortunate a couple years ago to be a part of an anthology book called The Lightness of Choosing You. And it kind of came to me through a friend very surreptitiously. I was like traveling around the world by myself and was happened to be in New Orleans for a week. And I love New Orleans, one of my favorite cities to visit. I wrote out this chapter that I could contribute to that book when I heard that my friend was going to be a part of this book, and I was like, you know what? If I was going to write a book for this book, they hadn't even offered it to me yet, by the way. I was like, what would I write? So I just
I love it.
in like a couple hours, I just wrote it out, and then she called me back later. She's like, by the way, they're looking for other people. Do you want to join? And I was like, do I already have that draft for you? Yes, I do. And so it was really cool. And as much as it was a really messy process with the publisher and all that stuff, I've been writing other books, and because my business and my life has been so complex and inclusive and diverse in so many different ways, it's been tricky to be like, I kind of hop around in each of the books. And now the one that's really taking the lead and that I'm almost done writing is like a workbook for families so that they can go through these different aspects of families, like self-care, planting seeds for communication, how they do organization and like making space in their home, like and how their space can contribute to them learning and supporting the learning styles of everybody. And so they can go through these different aspects of family life, which is very complex, and they can do it on their own and see how it works. Because one of the things is that given where I'm at in my business, not everyone can work with me. Not everyone can afford to work with me. Not everyone wants the style where I work virtually with everybody. A lot of people want in person, but what if they had a little guidebook, right? So that's one of the things that I'm really excited about that
Perfect.
I'd like to finish by the end of this year. I'm doing more speaking engagements. I'm asking of myself and of the universe to do like a TEDx talk or something like that about this weird, different way that I am with families. But I've been really fortunate to do a lot of parent workshops all over Chicago, and I'm starting to do it in Charlotte, where daycares and preschools and different schools, even some companies will ask me to do staff trainings or do parent workshops around communication, team building, like what to be looking out for around communication, how to improve it, how to improve the self-care too. Because with companies, they don't take as much personal days. You actually can retain your employees if they care for themselves and if they know how to do that. So what if they're having those pain and the issues? What if they're dealing with elderly parents like I am, or family members that have special abilities? They're being pulled in all these different directions. How do they do that and care for themselves while they're caring for these others and show up as a good employee? So that's been fun. I'd love to have more of that. I think that that's where my business is moving toward more and more. My podcast, Choosing a Different Future, has been fun. It took a bit of a pause because I've been focusing on being the power of attorney and emergency medical decision maker for my dad, who has a lot of health issues,
Yeah.
and he's out of state. So that's a whole other conversation. Given how tumultuous my relationship was with him growing up, I mean, he was like, I'm out in college with money, right? He still was trying to call and all these different things. For me to forgive him, for us to find a way to create a different type of relationship after all of that has been really, really interesting. And for me to have his back in this way has been very different. But I'm looking forward to being able to start up my podcast again because I had about 5 years of doing it before this pause.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Siris, I feel like, you know what? I'm excited to continue to watch what you do because you're one of those people that when you were just describing the book and being involved in that book where you're like, well, I'm just going to write it. It's like you call things in. You call it in. It's like, it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's the energy I love to be around because I feel like for the rest of the day, I'm going to feel a little bit more empowered just because when I hear that you have a lot of clarity to what you want to do, you just do. You have a lot of clarity and I can feel that. And it's just so wonderful. And the fact that you work with kids is just, I love more than you will ever know because I can just see the energy that you have and how you translate that with them. And especially kids with special needs. I mean, it warms my heart to know that there's somebody like you out there. So I thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for being on this podcast and talking to us. You are amazing. And I honestly, I mean that. I want to follow what you're up to because I know it's going to be a lot of great things. All right, well, that's it for now. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word. So more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.